a great power rises, there is a corresponding globalization movement. This means that globalization is not a phenomenon that has continued from the past all the way to the present, rather it belongs to a great power. The Roman Empire had its own globalization. The Qin dynasty in China, around 200 BC, had its own globalization. Every globalization was initiated by a rising empire. And that globalization was also limited by the empire's own strength. The farthest location that the empire's power could influence and its transportation means could reach to find the boundary of its globalization. Therefore, in today's view, both the Roman Empire's globalization and the Qin dynasty's globalization were only considered to be a regional expansion. Globalization on today's terms started with the British Empire. The U.S. continued the British trade globalization for a while. Then it switched to U.S. dollar globalization. China's One Belt, One Road is not simply to join the global economic system, which is a globalization under the U.S. dollar. As a rising superpower, the One Belt, One Road strategy is the beginning of China's own globalization. It is a necessary globalization process that a superpower must have during the phase of its rise. One Belt, One Road is the best superpower strategy that China can bring up at this moment, because it is a countermeasure to the U.S. strategy of shifting focus to the East. Someone may ask, a countermeasure should be in the opposite direction of the force coming toward you. How can you turn your back on the U.S.? The U.S. is pressing China from the east over the Pacific Ocean, but China turns its back on the pressure and moves to the west. That's right. The One Belt, One Road strategy is China's indirect counter to the U.S. shift to the east. China turns its back on the U.S., to avoid direct confrontation. You pressure me, from the east, I walk to the west, not because I want to avoid you, nor because I am afraid of you, but rather because this is a smart move to diffuse the pressure you bring to me. The One Belt, One Road strategy does not require the two paths happen in parallel. It should have priorities. Sea power is still China's weakness, so we can focus on the land path first. The One Belt is the primary direction. This also means that we need to revisit the importance of the army. Some people say that China's army is the best in the world. It is true if it is inside China, the Chinese army will beat whoever invades China's land. The problem is that China's army may not have the capability to go outside China to fight and win a war. I talked about this issue last year at the Global Times annual meeting. I said that America chose the wrong opponent when it chose China as its opponent and pressured China. The real threat to the U.S. in the future is not China, but rather the U.S. itself. The U.S. will bury itself. That's because it has not yet realized that a big era is coming and the financial capitalism that the U.S. represents will reach its peak and then start falling. On the one hand, the U.S. has already taken full advantage of benefits that capital generates. On the other hand, via the technological innovation that the U.S. leads, the U.S. pushes the Internet, big data, and cloud computing to an extreme. These tools will eventually become the forces that end financial capitalism. Taobao.com and Tmall.com, both under the Alibaba company, registered 50.7 billion yuan, $8.2 billion, in sales on November 11, 2014. A few weeks later, the total internet sales plus the in-store sales in the U.S. market in the three-day Thanksgiving weekend was only 40.7 billion yuan, $6.6 billion. The 50.7 billion yuan is only the sales for one day on Alibaba, not including 163.com, QQ.com, JD.com, and other online stores in China, nor including any physical store sales. All Alibaba's sales were done via Alipay, an electronic payment system. What does Alipay mean? It means that currency is out of the trade platform. The U.S. hegemony is based on its dollar. What is the dollar? It is a currency. In the future, when we stop using currency to complete sales, the traditional currency will be useless. Will the empire that is established on currency still exist? That is the question that the Americans should think about. 3D printing also represents a future direction. It will create fundamental change to the human production process. When the production process changes and the trading process changes, the world will go through a fundamental change. History shows that these two changes, not other factors, are the real cause for society's change. Today's capital may disappear when currency disappears. When the production method changes along the line of 3D printing, the human world will step into a new social mode. At that time, China and the US will stand at the same starting line of the Internet, big data, and cloud computing. The competition at that time will depend on who will be the first to step through this new door, not on who will press the other down. From this point of view, I say that the US has chosen the wrong opponent. America's real opponent is itself and this change. America has shown a surprising slowness in realizing this point. That is because America has too much invested in keeping its hegemonic position. It does not want to share power with other countries, nor does it want to step together with others into the new social door behind which there are still many things unknown to us.